It all began with a piece of fiberglass and a dream of a quiet Saturday. I'd finally saved up enough to buy my little slice of happiness. A 22-foot bow rider. Nothing fancy, just a simple boat to take out on the serene, glassy waters of Willowmere Lake. I'd back my truck down my own driveway, right to the water's edge, and slide her in. It was a 5-minute process. 10, tops. I'd been doing this for a month without issue. Then the HOA found its reason to exist. The letter was taped to my front door, sealed in a crisp, accusatory white envelope. The header was embossed, which should have been my first clue to the level of pretension I was dealing with. Willowmere Estates Homeowners Association. Official violation notice, code 17.3.b. Dear resident of 17 Lakeview Drive, it has been observed that you are repeatedly in violation of Covenant 17.3. b. No watercraft, trailer, or associated vehicular apparatus shall be present in any driveway, street, or visually obtrusive location for a period exceeding 15 consecutive minutes for the purpose of loading or unloading. Photographic evidence confirms your vehicle and boat trailer were stationary in your driveway for a period of 28 minutes on Saturday last. This creates an eyesore, lowers property values, and sets a dangerous precedent. You are hereby fined $350. Future violations will result in exponentially increasing fines and potential lien action against your property. In service, Patricia Trish Vanderlee, President, Willowmere Estates HOA. Where pristine living flows. I read it twice. An eyesore? My boat was cleaner than her probably bleached teeth. A dangerous precedent? Of what? The audacity of owning recreational equipment? I, being a reasonably calm human, decided to be diplomatic. I sent a polite email explaining the situation. The boat was legally registered, I was on my own property, and it was physically impossible to launch it in under 15 minutes. I even offered to plant a small privacy shrub. The response was a masterclass in bureaucratic condescension. Mr. Evans, the covenant does not concern itself with the physics of your personal recreational choices. It concerns itself with the visual harmony of our community. The presence of a boat trailer is visually dissonant. The fine stands. Plantings must be pre-approved by the Architectural Review Committee. Submission form attached. Allow 6 to 8 weeks for processing. Regards, Trish. I felt the first ember of rage ignite in my gut. But I'm a planner, not a yeller. I paid the fine. And then I opened a new Notes app file titled Operation Deep Dive. Thus began the Great War of Attrition. Now that I was on Trish's radar, the violations multiplied like rabbits. I received a $75 fine because my garbage can lid was not fully and symmetrically seated on collection day. A $100 fine for unauthorized ambient lighting because the soft, solar-powered path lights in my garden were not of the approved brushed nickel finish. The piece de resistance was a $200 fine for creating a habitat for vermin after a neighbor, I'm sure it was Trish herself, reported the unapproved bird feeder I'd put out. It was a simple wooden house for chickadees. Each time I would appeal with photos and logic. Each time, I was denied by a terse email from Trish, often seizing the entire HOA board to publicly shame me. The board was a collection of yes men and women I dubbed the Nodding Squad. I started doing two things. First, I documented everything. Time-stamped photos of my perfectly seated garbage can lid. Video of me launching the boat in a record-breaking 19 minutes. Second, I began the slow, painful process of reading the Willowmere Estates CC and RS. All 187 pages of soul-crushing legalese. It was like reading stereo instructions written by a dictator. But buried in the mind-numbing text, I found interesting things. Rules about satellite dish placement, nowhere visible from the street. Rules about the acceptable shades of beige for house paint, desert wind, creamy mocha, or toasted almond. And then, I found a curious clause about common areas and amenities. My research shifted from defense to offense. I needed to understand my enemy. I started taking evening walks around the neighborhood, not for leisure, but for reconnaissance. And my primary target was Trish Vanderlee's property. Her house was a McMansion perched on the largest lot, right on the lake. It was a lot, and it was a gold mine. My deep dive folder began to bulge. Violation number 1. Her massive, ornate satellite dish was clearly visible from the street, bolted to the side of her house. Covenant 9.4.a. Violation number 2. She had installed permanent, bright white landscape lighting that was not soft glow, as required. Covenant 12.7.f. Violation number 3. Her sprawling deck had been recently extended. I cross-referenced the county's public building permit database. No permit was on file. A direct violation of Covenant 5.1 and county law. The hypocrisy was staggering. But it was the 4th violation that made me stop in my tracks. Trish had a beautiful, professionally built dock. And moored to that dock was a brand new, gleaming white pontoon boat. It was far larger and more visually dissonant than my humble bowrider. And then I remembered the clause about common areas. I dove back into the bylaws. Section 2, Article 1, Definition of Common Property. It stated that all greenbelts, parks, and the body of water known as Willowmere Lake were common property, owned and maintained by the HOA for the benefit of all residents. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. If the lake was common property, then no private docks were allowed, and neither were private boats permanently moored to them. Trish wasn't just a hypocrite. She was illegally using community property for her own personal benefit. But I needed to be sure. I made a call to my lawyer, an old college friend named Sarah who specialized in property law. I sent her the bylaws. Her response an hour later was a single line. You need to check the land deeds for the original development. Something's fishy here. So I did. And what I found changed everything. A trip to the county clerk's office revealed the motherlode. The original land developer for Willowmere Estates had, indeed, deeded the land around the lake to the HOA as common property. But due to a bizarre clerical error that was never corrected, the developer had retained the ownership of the lake bed itself, the actual land under the water. That developer, an old man named Arthur Finch, had sold off all his assets years ago. I spent a day digging through old property records, my heart pounding. And then I found it. Lot 17, Lakeview Drive. My property wasn't just the plot of land my house sat on. The original convoluted deed, written before the HOA even existed, included a strange, long, narrow parcel that encompassed the entire lake bed of Willowmere Lake. It was a vestigial tale of a clause everyone had forgotten. When I bought the house, I bought the land under the lake. I didn't just live on the lake. I owned the lake. The power shift was instantaneous and profound. The calm, reasonable homeowner was now a calm, reasonable homeowner who held the ultimate trump card. The letters from the HOA grew more aggressive. The latest one threatened a lien on my house if I didn't remove my blight-inducing vessel from the community forever. I decided it was time for a public reckoning. I requested a special session of the HOA board to discuss my compliance issues. Trish, smelling victory, eagerly agreed. She even sent a neighborhood-wide email reminding residents of the importance of our community standards. A not-so-subtle dig at me. The night of the meeting, the clubhouse was packed. The nodding squad was lined up behind the main table, with Trish at the center, looking like a queen holding court. She had even dressed for the occasion, wearing a sharp, intimidating blazer. "Mr. Evans," she began, not even waiting for the meeting to be called to order. "We are all aware of your repeated and flagrant disregard for our community's rules. Are you finally here to capitulate?" A few of her sycophants tittered. I saw my nice next-door neighbor, old Mr. Gable, sink lower in his chair, looking embarrassed for me. I stood up, holding a simple manila folder. "Actually, Trish, I'm here to discuss a few compliance issues I've noticed in the neighborhood. I've become quite the student of our bylaws." She rolled her eyes. "We don't have time for your distractions." "Oh, this is directly on topic," I said, my voice calm. I opened the folder. "Let's start with Covenant 9.4.a, regarding satellite dishes." I slid a high-resolution photo of her dish onto the table. The room went quiet. "This is an outrage. This is harassment." she spluttered. Covenant 12.7.f, I continued, placing a photo of her glaring landscape lights next to the first. And my personal favorite, your deck expansion. The county has no record of a building permit. That's a violation of Covenant 5.1 and state law. The nodding squad was no longer nodding. They were staring open-mouthed at the evidence. Trish's face was a thundercloud. You have no right to photograph my property. This is a witch hunt because you can't follow a simple rule about your tacky little boat. Ah, the boat, I said, smiling. That brings me to my final point. Covenant 2.1, the definition of common property. It states that Willowmere Lake is common property, owned by the HOA for all residents. Is that correct? Yes, she snapped, seizing on what she thought was a defeat for me. Which is why your trailer is an issue. The lake is for everyone's visual enjoyment, not your personal dock. Exactly, I said, my voice dropping to a conversational tone. So, by that logic, your private dock and the pontoon boat permanently moored to it are both illegal structures on common property. You are trespassing, Trish. The gasp in the room was audible. Trish turned pale. How dare you? My dock was approved years ago. By whom? The board you control. I paused, letting the hypocrisy hang in the air. Then I delivered the kill shot. But it doesn't matter. You see, there was a small error in the original land deeds. The HOA owns the land around the lake. But the lake bed itself, the actual dirt and rock under all that water, that was never conveyed to the HOA. I pulled out the photocopy of my deed, the relevant section highlighted in bright yellow. I own it, Trish. I own the entire lake. So you are not only in violation of HOA rules, you are moored to a private structure on my private property. You are trespassing on my land. You could have heard a pin drop. The local news reporter who I'd quietly tipped off was scribbling furiously. The silence was broken by Mr. Gable. He owns the lake? Is that even legal? My lawyer assures me it is, I said, addressing the whole room. And as the owner, I'll be issuing a formal trespassing notice to Trish for her dock and boat. Furthermore, I will be charging the HOA a substantial annual licensing fee for the continued use of my lake as common property. That fee will be divided equally and added to everyone's HOA dues. Now I had their full attention. The mood in the room shifted from schadenfreude to panic. Now, wait a minute. One of the nodding squad began. Or, I said, cutting him off, we can consider this a clean slate. All fines against me and every other homeowner in this room that Trish has levied unfairly are rescinded, effective immediately. We dissolve the current board and hold new, democratic elections. We rewrite the most absurd of these covenants. And Trish here tenders her immediate resignation. The room erupted into cheers. It was a mutiny. Trish looked like a deflated balloon. The source of her power, the bylaws, had been used to dethrone her. She was finished. Trish Vanderlee resigned that night. She and her pontoon boat were gone within the month. We held new elections. Mr. Gable is now the president. His first act was to establish a reasonableness committee to review all fines. The 15-minute boat launch rule was the first to go. My bowrider now sits on a trailer in my driveway as long as I damn well please. The bird feeder is back, and the chickadees are thriving. As for the lake, I signed a perpetual $1 a year lease with the HOA, granting them usage rights. It was the neighborly thing to do. I never wanted to be a dictator. I just wanted to be left alone to enjoy my boat. Sometimes, when the water is calm and the sun is setting, I take the boat out and cruise past what used to be Trish's house. The new owners are lovely. They even wave. It's amazing how peaceful a neighborhood can be when the person in charge owns the one thing everyone wants to use. And it's even more amazing what you can find if you're willing to do a little digging. Not in your garden, but in the county clerk's office.